Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
The Seahawks are Super Bowl champs, Bad Bunny reaction, and Giannis is back making headlines. It's all straight ahead on a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, yo, off and running. Welcome into a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports, episode number 76 of the podcast. Lots to get into, plenty to talk about on this edition of the pod. We'll, of course, break down Super Bowl 60. We'll talk about the halftime show and whether you liked it or not, it really doesn't matter. And then we'll get into the top story in sports this week. And it was completely undercovered, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the Super Bowl or the halftime show or the ads or anything like that. And we'll kind of try to point out why it should have been a much bigger story. But before we get to any of that, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're taking the podcast in on. Like if you can, share if you can, review if you can, but most importantly, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. It's absolutely free, and it really does help the podcast grow in 2026. All right, let's get into Super Bowl 60. Congratulations to the Seahawks. Congratulations to Sam Darnold and Mike McDonald and all the Seahawks players on defense. They didn't just win the game. They absolutely dominated. 29-13 was the final score. Doesn't really tell you just what an absolute thrashing this was. And if you didn't enjoy the game, congratulations, you're human. It was a brutal game to watch. And brutal doesn't necessarily mean unimpressive. It was impressive to watch the way the Seahawks defense was going about things. The only problem is it's kind of a rerun. We saw that last year with the Eagles completely dominating the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl. And much like last year, it was clear early on, boy, oh boy, this game is not going to be competitive in any way. And that's where I want to start, is that honestly, it is ridiculous to me that we can live in 2026 in the most data-obsessed time in sports history, and still we can't give the Super Bowl MVP to a defensive player unless that guy puts up a cartoon stat line. I get that the counting stats, the traditional stats of sacks and interceptions, maybe they don't tell the whole story, but there's got to be a way that you can give that award to somebody on the defense because the defense was the story. Now, I get it might be hard to single out one specific person. Maybe it's a duo. Maybe it's a trio. I don't care. But all due respect to Kenneth Walker, he was not the most valuable part of that game. It was the Seattle defense. So I would say congratulations to the Seahawks, but especially to the defense. They came up with an absolutely overwhelming performance when it mattered most. And somehow we should be able to, in this day and age, get it right. Because the Seahawks defense was the story. And this was not one kind of fluky type of thing. Seattle, I'm sure the articles have already started to pop up. I think they have a real case for being one of the most complete teams of the last 26 years, right? They were finished third in scoring offense, 28 points per game, finished top 10 in total offense, top 10 in passing. But the defense is their real story. They had everything that you would want. Special teams, the punter was amazing in the Super Bowl, the kicking game with all the field goals, everything like that. But the defense is the real linchpin of their team. Sixth in total defense, third against the run, first in scoring, giving up 17.2 points per game. And then they go out there on Sunday after all that buildup, and you're kind of hoping you're going to get a good game. And it was not a good game, but they put on an absolute clinic. And I think something that should be clear right now, the Patriots were unable to do anything in that game. You know, if you look at the box score, you know, there's the old line of there's liars, there's dirty liars, and there's statisticians. You know, the Patriots might have put up 335 total yards. That's nonsense. They had one good drive the entire night. Seattle tied the Super Bowl record for 7 sacks. They forced 3 turnovers, including one for a pick six. they dominated in every single way. They were constantly in the New England backfield. They broke protections. They broke the Patriots' timing. I think they kind of broke the Patriots. I mean, that's how dominating they were. At no point in this game did you really feel good about New England putting together anything. They had more punts at one point than completions. Through 3 quarters, they had 0 points on the board. They were 15 minutes away from being the first team to be shut out in the Super Bowl. That is a historic type of performance in a league, and I think as fans, we're all attracted to the offense. The Seattle defense was the story of that game. So for me, there's 2 main takeaways of Super Bowl 60 as I kind of look back on it now. And look, I thought the Patriots were going to put up a decent effort. But I think the first thing that you have to take away after you watch that game is that it's hard to view New England as anything other than a fraudulent team. And I don't mean this in a bad way. Maybe, they're very young, but they got completely exposed in this game. And I get over the course of the season, you beat the teams on your schedule. The Patriots didn't come up with a schedule. The NFL does. But context matters. And, all the talk surrounding the Patriots all year, it kind of got ignored because they kept winning games, but they had the 3rd easiest schedule in NFL history, a postseason where it was kind of cleared for them by injuries. They played 10 teams this season that fired their coach, and that doesn't even include the 2 games they played the Jets, who should have absolutely, at the end of the season, fired their coach. So this is a young team, and I don't want to come to, when the story ends the way it does for the Patriots, it's easy to say that everything's terrible, but they're a young team that caught every possible break, and they caught every possible break until Sunday. And they were completely overmatched, outclassed, outmaneuvered, out everything. They did not belong in that game. They did not belong on the same field as Seattle. And the negative thing is, usually the team that loses the Super Bowl the following season, they have a bit of a letdown. The Patriots look like they had the letdown in the Super Bowl itself. It was that bad. So it's hard to look back on their season and not see them as proof or a product of the schedule that they played and the circumstances that were presented to them. And again, look, you have to take advantage of that, but I don't think that we can now view them after that game as the start of some perennial powerhouse. The second big takeaway for Super Bowl 60 has to be that defense still wins. This is the 2nd year in a row where defense was the defining factor of the Super Bowl. Last year, it was the Eagles and their pass rush just absolutely destroying Patrick Mahomes, where he was incapable of doing anything, and that game was over pretty much from it began. And for Drake May, it was a full-scale reality check. It was a meltdown. I guess the only good news is that last year, Patrick Mahomes looked completely mortal, and this year it was Drake May in year 2 looking completely mortal. So if you can't, and it really gets down to the basic facts, if you can't protect the quarterback, the Chiefs last year, the Patriots this year, it doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do on offense. And even when May was not under pressure, he was just bad. He was just bad all night. So and scary because this was the guy who was 1 vote away from winning the NFL MVP. And look, it was not all his fault. It certainly was a team effort on offense. The Next Gen Stats certified or credited 14 quarterback pressures on their left tackle, Will Campbell. And in case that's the most in any game this season, including the playoffs. So 14 is just a nightmare kind of performance. And the Seahawks, it was almost like they were a shark that tasted blood or smelled blood. The Patriots' offensive line could not protect. The quarterback could not make plays, completely unraveled, and the skill position players completely disappeared. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The Patriots finished the first half with 51 total yards of offense. I mean, it was just non-competitive. And it's crazy to me that the MVP goes to the running back. I mean, 51 total yards, that's the second fewest. I think it's second fewest to the year before with the Chiefs. So just an absolutely brutal way for the Patriots season to end. And I think that they go into next year a marked team. Their schedule's certainly going to be harder, and they have to now go about removing this label as being a fraudulent kind of a paper tiger. So it was an ugly game, but the message is crystal clear. Seattle didn't just win. They overpowered New England. And look, if we're being honest, what Super Bowl 60 was really about was that performance of the defense still decides who wins. For all the focus that we have on offense, for all the focus that we have on quarterbacks, the narrative has been for a while, you have to have elite quarterback play to even dream of making a Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl. And look, Sam Darnold was fine. He had a really good regular season. He was excellent against the Rams in the NFC title game. But the big thing that he had on Sunday was he just didn't screw it up. He didn't turn the ball over like New England did. So that narrative is you have to have elite quarterback play. I don't know that Sam Darnold is elite. He's a Super Bowl champion. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters when you ask a question about the quarterback. Can you win a Super Bowl with this guy? And now we know you can do that with Sam Darnold. But I will wonder what the results are and what the takeaways are around the league in regards to the quarterback play, because Seattle didn't do it the typical way. They found a guy who was available in free agency. That's generally not the way the team that wins the Super Bowl finds their quarterback. But the Seahawks, they were the most complete team. They were the best team from start to finish. And no question, they are the winners of Super Bowl 60. All right, let's move on to the halftime show and Bad Bunny's performance at Super Bowl 60. That's a sentence I did not think I'd be talking about on a sports podcast. But I'll be honest with you. My opinion does not matter, and your opinion does not matter, but I'll tell you why they don't matter. And I'll preface it right off the start. Bad Bunny is not on my playlist. Like, I don't know any Bad Bunny songs. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school. 30 years ago, I've retained basically 5 words. And unfortunately for me, Bad Bunny does not have any songs about pantalones. So this stuff was always going to go over my head. He should not be trying to appeal to me. Now, the production, if you can get past the language barrier, the production of that halftime show was amazing. That was not a concert. That was like a TV show. It was amazing. The choreography, the camera angles. You never caught a cameraman on camera, even with all the switching that they did. So that part was amazing. But here's the thing. If you like the halftime show, if you didn't like the halftime show, your opinion of the halftime show does not matter, because the halftime show, I'll admit, it was not for me. And here's the thing. It was not for you either. Assuming that you watched the game inside the United States, which I'm assuming anybody who's listening to this podcast probably took in the game inside the United States. Now, look, there was a time when the halftime show, the appeal of the halftime show was for the casual fan, right? The person who didn't watch football week in and week out. Your mom, your sister, maybe your wife, so that they could see, they would have something to tune into outside of the football. That's not the case anymore. The NFL is bulletproof in the United States. They are too big to fail. They don't care if you liked the halftime show or didn't. They already have your attention. They don't need to do anything to get you more in tune. What they do care about is growth outside of the United States, and that is why they picked Bad Bunny. So let's put some numbers on this, because I've seen all these opinions about why Bad Bunny was picked. He is a massive global superstar. In the 4 of the last 5 years, he has been the most streamed artist on Spotify. In 2025 alone, he had 20 billion streams of his songs. So he dominates Latin America. He dominates Spain. So while he's popular in the United States, he is huge outside of the United States. And that's the NFL strategy. They have 9 international games next season. That's what they're laser focused on growing the game outside of the United States, especially in Latin America, in South America, in Spanish-speaking communities, in Spanish-speaking countries. And Bad Bunny, picking Bad Bunny for the halftime show, there is a reason for that. That is a direct effort to engage the league's fastest growing demographic. That's why he was picked in the first place. Not because he's necessarily a household name or he's got the biggest hits in this country. So you might have missed, the lyrics, or it might have gone over your head like it did mine. That's fine. The show was not meant for you. Now, if you enjoyed it, great. But it was about expanding the global reach, building new fans, and most importantly for the NFL, what do they care most about? Money. That's the business side of the halftime show now. It's not about making every American feel like, hey, this is my favorite band, or I really like these hits, or I want to see how they do this song. It's about making the NFL a global brand. And look, new music, it's not really about adults anyway. It's about kids. So if you like the halftime show, fantastic. If you didn't like the halftime show, I would say you're probably going to have to adjust to some things. This is not like the 90s where In Living Color would put up their own show against the halftime show to try and steal some attention away from the Super Bowl. That's why the halftime show became what it became. So again, this isn't for you. It's for the millions of fans outside the U.S. who the NFL does not have their money yet, right? So they're going to be turning to stars like Bad Bunny in the future. So if you love this year's show, you hated this year's show, I would simply say get used to it, because the NFL, if there's one thing they're always looking for the next revenue stream. And chances are that next revenue stream, if you're similar age to me, it's not going to be your favorite band. The halftime show is going to be somebody in the next few years that you have never heard of before. So I would simply say, this is the future. Get used to it.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally, let's move on to what I think is the most important sports story from the past week. And just when we thought we were done talking about Giannis and trade destinations, he went and did something that put himself back in the sports headlines. But this story has not gotten nearly the amount of attention that I thought that it would. So after the trade deadline comes and goes, Giannis, who's been front and center in the trade talks, he announces a partnership with a company by the name of Kalshi. For those that don't know, Kalshi is a prediction market. Basically, it's a market where you can trade on the outcomes of real-life events. So you might have heard about prediction markets before. If you've not, don't worry. You're about to very soon. I'll explain to you what they are, but even beyond this podcast, these things are about to become the next big thing, and they are going to be everywhere. Now, the 2024 presidential election, that's the first time that the prediction markets really kind of broke through to the mainstream. That was the first time most people had heard of platforms like Kalshi or its competitor Polymarket. And what happens is people putting up real money in real time on the outcome of, at that time, the election. And once that door has opened, boy, it has accelerated very fast. Since then, platforms like these have exploded in popularity. The menu of prediction contracts has grown very, very quickly, and they're starting to show up everywhere. And the line between a prediction market and a traditional gambling platform, or even a mainstream investment platform, is getting blurrier and blurrier, and probably will only continue to do so. Like, we are headed towards a world where investors can pick up a stock in the stock market and place a bet on the Super Bowl all on the same app at the same time. So before we get to Giannis, I want to hit on why these prediction markets are becoming so popular so quickly, and why they are different than what we think of as traditional sports books like FanDuel or DraftKings or BetMGM or any of those others. So one of the reasons why these prediction markets are taking off is, whether we like it or not, they're actually really good at forecasting events. Like, unlike polls or the traditional talking heads on TVs, people putting up their real money in real time, when they put that on the line, you're not just sharing an opinion, you're backing it up with cash. And because of that, the market updates in real time as new information comes out, giving you this constantly changing snapshot of what people actually think is going to happen. And again, it's not just based on opinion, it's based on the money that they're putting up. So people will say, well, isn't that kind of like what the stock market already does? Not exactly. What these contracts are way simpler. They strip down everything into one clear yes or no outcome. And in a stock market, it feels maybe a little bit more complicated, maybe a little bit more confusing. That kind of clarity in terms of just a simple yes-no question is clearly very appealing to investors or people who are using these markets. So you might be asking, what's the difference between a sports book and a prediction market? Well, here's why prediction markets are starting to scare the traditional sports books like FanDuel and DraftKings and the rest of them. and why a lot of fans find the prediction markets more appealing. So sports books, like a FanDuel or a DraftKings, they make their money on being the house, right? They set the odds, they bake in whatever their edge is, and no matter who wins, they get paid, right? Prediction markets kind of flip that completely. There is no house setting the line. The prices are set by the people using the platform, betting on either side, using their money on either side. So everyone's trading against each other, not against the house, not against the book. And the platform, they take a transaction fee no matter how it works out. And people certainly have noticed more than 80% of Kalshi's activity recently comes from sports-related contracts. So take the Super Bowl and why it would be appealing to use Kalshi as opposed to in a FanDuel or DraftKings. FanDuel or DraftKings, you can bet the game, the typical stuff, the spread, the over-under, maybe a couple of props. On Kalshi, you can bet the game, but you also can bet on who's advertising in the game, what songs get played at halftime. It's not just betting sports anymore. It's using the entire ecosystem around sports and your information to make money. Another huge difference is kind of where this all operates. Prediction markets are starting to plug in directly to investing platforms like Robinhood. That's a very popular one right now. And that puts everything in one place. So you got your stocks, you got the options, you got sports-related bets, and you don't need different apps. You don't need different accounts. You can trade on Apple or another stock, and you can put money on the Super Bowl all in the same portal, all in the same app. And I guess for younger investors who are on their phones even more than us olds are, that is appealing. So when a contract of a Super Bowl sits next to your stock portfolio, I would think it doesn't really seem like gambling anymore. It feels like asset allocation or whatever term you want to use. Sportsbooks, meanwhile, are still kind of stuck in their kind of walled off worlds where each state has different rules and it's a little murky there. That's why you're starting to see companies like DraftKings try to adapt because they see this is the future. They're not the future. This is the future. So they just launched DraftKings a product called DraftKings Prediction. And it's kind of like these prediction markets, but it feels like they're kind of playing defense on this rather than innovating in any way. But the real takeaway and why these prediction markets aren't just another betting option, they're fundamentally different in the way of thinking about speculation, and one that absolutely blurs sports, investing, and information all kind of into the same thing. So back to Giannis. When he announced, we're all on Kalshi now, we're suddenly supposed to believe that this is just like some other athlete endorsement deal, an athlete attaching his name to a brand, whether he actually uses it or not. Kalshi can call itself a prediction market all it wants, but let's be clear. Prediction market is just a fancy term for gambling. You can throw whatever terms that you want about it, but the first and foremost, this is simply betting. And it's really hard to dispute that. It's betting. If you're putting up money and what you think a future event that's going to happen, you win if you're right and you lose if you're wrong, and it involves money. You can dress it up with whatever words you want, like contracts and markets and liquidity. But look, if it walks like betting and it talks like betting and it pays out like betting and you lose money like betting, that's betting. And the distinction that matters because, we spent the last decade, it feels like, normalizing sports gambling and making it out like it's more sophisticated than it is. Prediction markets are not morally different, but they are broader, looser, and they are way more dangerous for the people that are using them. So that brings us to the second factor. We've kind of hit on this before in a previous podcast, but this is one that should generally make people more uncomfortable. Prediction markets, like these Kalshi, Polymarket, they do not police inside information. So again, we talked about this on a previous podcast episode. I don't remember which one it was, but this is just how these platforms are designed. Prediction markets want the most accurate information possible. That is their whole pitch. And the market works best with the smartest, most informed people participating. So that might not sound like a bad thing, but where that information comes from, they don't care. They're not policing it. Even after the fact, they're not tracking it down. They don't care if it's public information. They don't care if it's private information. They don't care if it's ethical. They don't care if it came from a leak. They don't care. They view themselves as, now they'll say this, they're not a betting platform. They are a prediction market. So if you know something that the others people don't, that the general public does not know, the market rewards you. And we've already seen this play out in the real world, not in sports so much, but in politics. There was a very publicized case not that long ago involving the prediction market on information surrounding the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. The markets moved before the public got the news, and a single person made a ton of money. I think it was $30,000 into $400,000. And he made money, or she made money, because they had access directly to some information. Otherwise, they're just the luckiest person ever. So they were operating on inside information. That's not a bug, that's a feature. Prediction markets favor insiders by design. So now, think about that, right? If you have inside information, you can benefit. Drop that into a sports league, like, say, I don't know, the NBA, where injury information is guarded like state secrets, while like rotations and lineups can change sometimes right before tip-off, where trade discussions happen in private rooms and we hear rumors about, but nobody has any real inside information. If you happen to have inside information on that, you could make a killing. Or an injury type of situation where an injury is vague when somebody might return or not. And then ask fans if they think that there's no problem when a superstar player becomes a shareholder in a platform that thrives on uncertainty and rumors and private information. Now, to be fair to Giannis, he did not break any rules. He did not break any NBA rules. The NBA apparently is fine with this. He didn't break any gambling rules. He didn't do anything illegal. But yet, this still kind of feels like it stinks, right? Like, if something stinks like this, you have a star player involved in something like this, it usually feels like we've crossed into a territory where the rule book has not caught up to as of yet. And it feels like only a matter of time before it does. And it should be made clear. According to Kalshi, or these prediction markets, Giannis is forbidden on trading on NBA markets. Okay, let's believe that for a second. That doesn't necessarily pertain, I don't think, to anybody who surrounds Giannis. But, let's just talk about fans for a second. Fans are now being asked to separate Giannis into different things. Like, he has to be Giannis the player, the public figure, the subject of massive trade speculation, which, of course, is just going to pick up after the season is over. It's not like it's over for his trade speculation. And now he is also an equity partner in essentially a betting platform. So this is not just the same old thing. And while the platform, up until recently, one of the most active markets that they had, was Giannis's future. When the NBA trade deadline passed, there was $23 million tied to Giannis's future in these markets. So I don't think that you can kind of unring this bell. And I think that this just creates more problems for the league down the road in terms of fans' belief in the product. Like every night a player takes off, or every night somebody, doesn't play as many minutes as they think. And this was never part, I don't think that this is part of what the NBA was thinking about when they got into bed with the gambling companies, because that seemed a little bit more straightforward. The league always, I think, probably thought that the issue was corruption, right? Point shaving or rigging games outright. But the long term, if you're looking long term and where this is going in 5 years, 10 years, I think the real issue is an erosion of trust. Because if you ever get to a point, and look, it feels like we're moving closer and closer and more rapidly towards that, it feels like that the issue of actual trust in the league, if we're not already there, we're moving there very quickly. And Giannis is not some kind of outlier. He's just the most visible example at this moment, right? I mean, LeBron has constant ads with, is he with DraftKings? I think he's with DraftKings. I think Kevin Durant is with FanDuel. I mean, these sports books alone, they are tied and partnered with all of these different leagues. And the NBA, I think that they've had the most problems with it, but they're not just flirting with the gambling anymore. They are tied to it. They are married to it. So this is the next step in that. This is not just gambling. When Giannis becomes a shareholder in a prediction market, I don't think fans should see this as a clever business move, but it just feels like we are slowly moving towards a time where sports becomes financial, like everything is financial in terms of it. It's transactional in a way where the games don't matter, the players don't matter. It's just the outcome and whether you won your bet or lost your bet. And it's not a great place to be. And even if Giannis does nothing wrong, and even if Kalshi has these guardrails in place, even if nobody ever crosses a line, again, I think perception in this case does become reality because sports doesn't just survive on legality. If somebody did something wrong, I think that they also rely on faith that when you tune in a game, whatever sport it is, that you believe that it's on the level. So you can call what Kalshi does or Poly Market, you can call it a prediction market. It's betting. And once fans start questioning the motives of people involved in the games, and especially something as public as, say, Giannis's trade market and the amount of money that is traded on that, this is a scary place to be. And make no mistake, the future of sports gambling is right alongside these investment platforms. Go take a look at an app like Robinhood. It does not look all that much different than FanDuel or DraftKings or the rest of them. And Robinhood has become kind of the face of the new era of retail investing at a time where traditional investment companies apparently are having tougher times signing up new people. Robinhood has added 25 million accounts, I believe, in the last calendar year. And there's a reason for that. It's super casual. You can make trades fast. You can lower fees, fewer barriers to entry, and it feels accessible in a way that maybe investing feels intimidating. And that's all great. Those are good aspects to have. But when those changes get it's great to be able to trade easily if the participation of that is thoughtful and informed. And if it's not just sitting on your phone. And I think if you blur the line between investing and gambling, which is clearly the direction we're moving into with Poly Market and Kalshi, I think it puts it in an even greater gray area with these prediction markets. And look, the appeal is obvious, and they're going to make a ton of money. But everyone, I think, kind of believes, and why they will is because everybody believes that they have an edge. And prediction markets kind of tap into that instinct of inviting people to bet on not just games, but their confidence in their own knowledge that you have, I have a special knack at this. And for those that will say about the Giannis thing, well, isn't this just another endorsement? Athletes do endorsements all the time. Doesn't mean that they, you got Tom Brady doing Pizza Hut. He doesn't eat Pizza Hut. There's a big difference here. Endorsements are transactional, right? You sign up, you get paid, you appear in ads or advertising pictures, whatever. Giannis didn't do that. He didn't take a check. He took equity. He is now a shareholder in a company whose business model depends on speculation, uncertainty, and having inside information. The same uncertainty that just surrounded him and his own future for months. So I think that is a very different relationship than we've seen even with the gambling partners. And once you go from sportsman to spokesperson to stakeholder, I don't know. I think the math changes. And it's not like the NBA. Obviously, the NBA can't plead ignorance on this. Not in the same season where they have federal gambling cases going on with current players and current coaches with Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups. And those investigations have not concluded as of yet. And who knows what's coming down the pike next, right? And in case you forgot, Rozier was charged with connection to sports betting scheme where he was giving inside information to someone about, how many minutes he would play or whether he would leave a game early. And then Billups, he was charged in, I think it was a separate case, but still it was involved in rigging poker games with direct ties to the mafia. This is not a good place for sports leagues to be. And right now, the gambling problem is still at the corruption stage. We're still talking about individual cases. And I'm sure if you ask the casual fan of who got caught in a gambling scheme in the NBA this year, maybe they might not remember Terry Rozier's name right now. Maybe they don't remember that Chauncey Billups got picked up with this as well. Maybe they do, but maybe they don't. But I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And once trust goes, man, it's really hard to get that toothpaste back in the tube. Because if fans stop believing what they're watching is on the level, the entire foundation cracks at that point. And that's the point of no return in this. You can survive corruption scandals to a point. And look, I don't think that the NBA's ratings problems or whatever are tied to that right now. But it's a fine line, man. There's a reason why the WWE is not listed on sports books. So to just kind of wrap this up, if you're using prediction markets, I think that there is a use for them to see what the crowd is thinking, see what direction things are pointing. That's fine. It can be interesting and it can be a smart use of technology. It is a tool. But if you are going to be putting your own money on the line, ask yourself this: do you have inside information about an event? Because if you don't, odds are someone else who is using that market probably does. And the old truth about playing poker, it's never been more real in your life. If you look around the table and you can't spot the sucker, chances are you're the sucker. And that is the world of prediction markets. The stakes are very real. The edge absolutely matters. And nobody is going to be holding your hand when you lose. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not done it already, hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're taking the podcast in on. Like, rate, share, but most importantly, subscribe, and we'll be back later this week with a new edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.